Today we will start our third chapter of class 8 history, ruling the countryside. In this chapter we will discuss about the following points: the company becomes the diwan, revenue for the company, the need to improve agriculture, problem in agriculture, a new system is devised, the Monroe system and its problems, crop for the Europe, indigo cultivation and niche, and last, riots forced to grow indigo and causes blue rebellion. Before we start, we should go back and to understand the actual scenario that time. After the Battle of Buxar in 1764, the Shah Alam II, the Mughal emperor, were forced to treaty with Robert Clive and gave to him a Diwani rights, means the revenue collection right, to Robert Clive for of Bihar, Bengal and Odisha, and also gave the compensation of the war around 25 lakh rupees that time. The East India Company was made the Diwan of Bengal on 12th August 1765 by the Mughal Emperor Shah Alam II. We already talked about this. Thus, the company became of the chief of financial administrator of the Treaty of Bengal. Now, the power. The power is shifted from Shah Alam II to Robert Clive. The company official understood as one important aspect of expanding their base in India. They understood the importance of those who had ruled the countryside in the past and had enjoyed authority and prestige. The company wanted to be careful not to annoy those people who, as a peasants, work for the company. Now, after the receiving of Diwani rights, the company growth of revenue, because they want to initiate to improve their financial situations to accept and receiving the Diwani. Initially, the company was just interested in collecting revenue so that its trade and other expenses could be financed. Before the Diwani rights, company always demanding their money, their wealth from the England to fulfill their needs, trades and maintaining their army. But now the scenario was changed. Now the company become a diwan. They have to be right to collection the revenues from the Indian peasants. Now they want to be improve their financial situations. The revenue was enough to be double in the purchase by company within 5 years. Now, what was the problem in Bengal provinces? Problem faced by the Bengal provinces, growth of problem for common people. But the Bengal economy was facing a deep crisis. What was the reason behind it? In 1770, a terrible famine is Bengal. It kills around 10 million pupils, and the peasants were not able to pay the dues, the taxes. Now, we can see in this picture that left side the Robert Clive who was receiving the revenue rights, means the Diwani rights from the Shah Alam II who seated in Patron. Next one is, let's see the Robert Clives. Now, according to this revenue system, the British East India Company, to improve the collection of revenue system, so they introduced the three major revenue reforms in India. The first one is permanent settlement. Permanent settlement means they fix the revenue collections from the peasants in India, and the company had to take some steps to improve the agriculture by improving investment in land. The permanent settlement was introduced in 1793 by Lord Cornwallis. According to this, the Raja and Talukdar, means the local landlords and the kings of India, the Raja and Talukdar were recognized as zamindar. They lost their prestigious post. Now they become a zamindar, were given the responsibility of revenue collection from the peasants, because the company does not want to be any direct taxes from the peasants. They want to be a mediator, and they convert Raja and Talukdar into a zamindar, and zamindar will be as a mediator to collect the taxes and give to the forward to the British East India Company. Now, the amount of this paid was fixed permanently, means no increasing of the taxes within the year after the year, because they fixed the taxes, hence the name of the permanent. The company officials felt that it would ensure a regular flow of revenues. They thought that whenever they fix the demand of revenues, they can be accept the money from the Indian peasants, because the Zamindar will be collecting the taxes and to forward the money to the British India Company, so they can maintain their army and they can be trade in India. They also feel that they would motivate the Zamindars, means the role of the Zamindars will be as a mediator of the company. So they feel that they would be motivate the Zamindars to invest in the improving the land, so they can be collected the more and more revenues. But the Zamindar would benefit from increased production, because the revenue demand would not be increased, because according to this permanent settlement the revenue collections was fixed. Now let us features of the settlements, also known as an Istamarari and Jamindari system. The second name of this revenue system was Istamarari and Jamindari system. Now who were the patron? We already discussed about the Lord Cornwallis in 1793 was introduced this permanent settlements. What are the areas? Now the Bengal, Bihar, Odisha, Uttar Pradesh and North Karnataka, which are the covered under the revenue system of permanent settlements. Now the how much land it's covered in the total agricultural land of India was 19%. Okay, now what was the role of the Jamindars? Now after the collections of revenue taxes, Jamindar hold 1/10 part for their needs of agricultural improvisations. Now again, what were the problems of the permanent settlement? What was the reason behind it? The revenue was fixed at such as a high level that the Jamindar found it difficult to pay, because sometime the drought areas were created, so how they can be collected the taxes from the farmer, and the farmer does not pay the taxes, then that the situation is so much created. Now a Jamindar who failed to pay the revenues lost his Zamindari, means the land of Jamindars were auctioned and to give the any other person who pay the maximum amount to and from the collection of revenues. Hence the Zamindar were not investing in the improvement of land. But the situation changed by the first decade of 19th century. There was prices rise and expansion in cultivation. The income of Jamindar increased but did not result in any gain for the company, because the revenue were fixed according to permanent settlements. Now, the Jamindar preferred to earn as much profit as they could and seldom bothered about investing in land. What consequence is that? They were just happy to lease out the land to tenant. Now, the system was extremely oppressive for the cultivator who cultivate the land, and he had to pay a high rent to the Jamindar, but there was no security of his right on the land. So, cultivator often had to take loan from the money lender to pay rent, and failure of the payment of the renter meant eviction for the cultivator from the land. These are the main problems who were facing by the cultivators. Now, the second revenue system which was introduced in India after the failure of the permanent settlement, the name is the Mahalwari system. Now we can understand that what is the meaning of Mahal. Mahal means a group of villages. The village was known as Mahal, hence this system was known as Mahalwari system. It was also decided to revise the revenue demand periodically, and the village headman, the headman of village, was given the responsibility of revenue collections. But in the permanent settlement, the Zamindar were appointed as a mediator of British India Company, But in this system, the Mahalwari system, the village headman will be responsible to collect the taxes of their own villagers, on the means cultivators, so they can be forward the money to the British India Company. And who were introduced this system? The Holt Mackenzie was convinced about the importance of village in the northern Indian society. He wanted to preserve these important social institutions. Now, what were the features? The feature of this settlement was revenue collections depend on production. It means the revenue collection was not fixed, even is depend on the production. Whether the production will be increased, so revenue tax collection will be increased. Now, what are the areas? The South India and Awadh, Middle India and Punjab, the major areas where the Mahalwari system was implemented. And how much the land in the total covered? Around 30% land in Mahalwari system, but we also talk about the permanent settlement, just 19% land of the total agricultural land in India. The last one is the tax amount flexible. We already talked about that revenue collections depend on the productions. Now the third system, the third very important system was introduced by British East India Company in India. This was called Raiyatwari system. The Raiyat means the villagers, the farmers, called the Raiyat. This system was also known as the Raiyatwari system. It was the first tried on a small scale by Captain Alexander Reed, who were introduced. This one is Tamil Nadu in the Baramahal areas the first time. Now, he tried some of those areas which was taken over after the defeat in Tipu Sultan. We already talked about the Tamil Nadu in the Baramahal. This system was subsequently developed by Thomas Munro in Madras. This system was gradually implemented all over South India. This was no traditional zamindaris in this south, hence the settlement had to be direct made with the cultivator, means the Rayat. So the system is called Rayatwari system. Now, what were the features? Feature of this settlement is patron of the Thomas Munro and Captain Alexander Reed. We already talked about this. Area Tamil Nadu, the mainly which was the observed and which was supervised by the Alexander Reed to implement this one first, the Rayatwari system. Now other one is Madras, Mumbai and Assam. And how much areas of the total agricultural land is? The 51% area of total land. So in these the three major system we already talk about. The permanent settlement around 19%, Mahalwari system around 30%, and the last one is the Rayatwari system around 51% total land of agriculture in India. How much the tax means revenue rates of from the collection by the Rayatwaris? The direct tax revenue collections around 33% to 55%. These three major revenue systems were also improve the situations of British East India companies in India, but there are many circumstances that the officers of British East India Company wanted to be collected taxes to improve the situations, to improve the taxes, but they do not any interest to improve the land farmers situations and land improvisations. Now, problem of excessive revenue demands. When the company increased the revenues with the three major steps, what was the reason behind it? Now, the revenue officials wanted to increase their income from the land, hence they fixed very high revenue demand. Peasants were not able to pay the revenues. The Rayat field to countryside and villages become deserted in many regions because the peasants left their lands and go away from these agricultural fields. Now, the scenario were changed. In the crop for Europe, after the receiving of Diwani rights, the company wanted to be production of the crops which is to be useful for European countries. Now, by the 18th centuries, the company was also trying to expand the cultivation of opium and indigo because they have the right to collect the taxes from Bengal, Bihar and Odisha. Then all over India were covered under the British territory. It is subsequent 150 years that British also persuaded or forced the cultivator to produce other crops like jute, tea, sugarcane, cotton, wheat, and rice to be supplied to Europe, which was highly demanded in European areas. Now, the high demand of indigo, what was the reason behind it? The tropical climate of good for indigo plantations. And indigo means a colored based plant which is to be used, which is to be demanding by the British dyer to dye their clothes, because the indigo plants to give the very bright color, white, bright blue color and permanent color for the clothes. The tropical climate means, because India the situation is a tropical region, so tropical climate is good for indigo plantation. By the 13th century, indigo Indian indigo was being used in Italy, France, Britain, but the price of indigo was very high. Hence, a small amount of Indian indigo could reach the European market. Now, other substitute crop which is to be grown in the temperate zone, woad. Woad is another plant which is used for making violet and blue color, blue dye. But the woad is a plant of temperate zone. We already talk about this. Hence, was easily available in Europe. But the woad was grown in northern Italy, southern France, and in the part of Germany and Britain. Woad producers in Europe were worried about the competition from Indian indigo. Hence, they pressurized the government to be ban the import of indigo. They can be save their jobs. Indigo cultivator was started by the French in Saint Domingue in the Caribbean island. Similarly, the Portuguese began indigo cultivation in Brazil, and the Britain in Jamaica, and Spanish in Venezuela. Indigo plantation were also started in many part of North America. But who were production this indigo and who were work in the farmland of indigos in the other temperate zone areas were the slaves of African citizens. By the end of the 18th century, industrialization started, began Britain, and cotton productions expanded manifold. These created an enormous demand for cloth dyes. The existing supply of indigos from the West Indies and America collapsed due to the various reasons. The indigo production in the world fell by half between 1783 and 1789. This means that there was increasing demand of indigo were increased. Now, India a major source of indigo. Company looked for way to expand the area under the indigo cultivation in India. From the last decades of 18th century, indigo cultivation in Bengal rapidly expanded. Only about 30% of indigo imported to Britain in 1788 was from India. This figure went up to 95% in 1810. Around 30 years, it can be improved around 95%. The commercial agent, which was called Gumasta, and officials of the company began investing in indigo production to increase their profit. So that many company officials were left their jobs to look after their indigo business. Many peoples from Scotland and England came to India and became planter to grab the opportunity. The company and banks were given loan for the indigo cultivators at that time. Now we can see the two pictures. First one is the Morris, which is Morris cloth print in the late 19th century in England, and the other one is the Kalamkari print. We know that the Kalamkari print was a famous printing art of India, which was practiced in Tamil Nadu and Andhra Pradesh and Telangana region mostly. Now, system of indigo cultivations. How much and how Indian farmers grow the indigo, there are the two major methods. Number one is the niche cultivation and number two is rayat cultivations. Under the niche cultivation, in this system, the planter produces indigo on those land which were under his direct control. Means the planters who grow the indigo their own land, around 25% area of the own land which is to be grown by the indigo plants. The planter either bought the land or the rented it from other zamindars, and he directly employed the laborer and producer indigo. What was the problem of the niche cultivation? Indigo cultivation only be cultivated on fertile land, but these area were densely populated and hence only a small plot could be acquired. This made it difficult to expand the area under niche cultivations. A large number of plantation required a large number of workers. So, work at indigo plantation coincided with a time when peasants were busy with their rice cultivations. Hence, the mobilizing the labor for the indigo cultivation was very difficult task for the Indian farmer and zamindars. Now, the second system of cultivation of indigo was India, the Rayati system. Under the Rayati system, indigo cultivation was done by the Rayat. Rayat means the villagers and the farmer. The planter made the Rayats to sign a contract or an agreement, and which is called Satta. The agreement between planter, means the farmer, and zamindars. Sometimes they pressurize the village's headman to sign a contract, means a Satta, on behalf of Rayas, because under the Mahalwari system, the village headman is appointed as a revenue collection person. So, sometimes they pressurize the village headman to sign the contract on behalf of the Rayas. After signing the contract, the Rayat got cash advance from the planter, but after taking the loan, the Rayat was committed to grow indigo on at least 25% of his land holding. Seeds and drills were provided by the planters because the indigo were highly demanded in European market. So, the cultivators prepared the soil, sod and seed the looked after the cross, but the planter bought indigo at low prices, and hence the Rayat were always in debt trap. A picture of land loan alls, the sketch in London in 1817, where the indigos traders sell out their indigos. Now, after the consequences of niche and Rayati's system, the Indian farmers were totally depressed, and they were attacked on gumastas, who were the agent of British company and traders, and they were socially boycott of the planters, of the farmers who were now. The thousands of Rayas in Bengal refused to grow indigo in March 1859. The Rayat confused to pay rent to the planters. The attack of indigo factories, because the Rayat means the farmers were depressed totally, and they doesn't want to be any new practices in India. They used to be armed with sword and spears, bows and arrows. Women also fought with pots, panda and kitchen implements. Those who worked for the planters were socially boycotted. And the Gomasta means the British planters agents, the Gomasta who were appointed, the farmer who were collecting the slaves to work for the farmland areas, were beaten up when they came to be collect rent. And the Gomasta were the agent of indigo planters. In many villages, headmen and mobilized the indigo peasants against the Lathia. Lathia means the person who control the law and orders by the forcefully and to collect the taxes from the farmers. The headmen were angry because they had been forced to sign indigo contract, which was called Satta. Some zamindars were angry with the increasing power of the planters because they have their own latiyas and at being forced to give them land on long leases. So, some zamindars also support the villagers in their revolt against the indigo planters. After the revolt of 1857, the British government was worried about the possibility of another popular rebellion. So, the lieutenant governor turned to region in the winter in 1859. This was seen as the sign of sympathy by the riots. When the rebellion split, intellectually from the Calcutta rushed to the indigo districts. They began writing about the misery of riots and the horror of the indigo planters, indigo system. The government called the military to protect the planters, the blue rebellions. The indigo commissions was set up to inquire into the system of indigo production, and the commissions held the planters guilty. It asked the rayers to fulfill their existing obligations and they were free to cultivate whatever they wish. Indigo factory in India, in this picture we can see how the Indian laborers forcefully to remove the indigo color in the factories. After the revolt, what was the result? The indigo production collapsed in Bengal and after the revolt, and the planters now shifted their operations to Bihar. Discovery of synthetic dyes in the late 19th century and severely affected the business, but the planters managed to expand productions. When in the 1970s, the Mahatma Gandhi, the freedom fighter of India, returned from South Africa in 1915, the plight to indigo farmers in the Champaran, the famous place of Bihar, Champaran, was brought to his notice. Mahatma Gandhi visited Champaran in 1917 and began to the movement against the indigo planter. Now we can see the indigo plant. Thank you.